But Jonathan Taylor, 32 carries for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns. Another game with 3 touchdowns. And then to top it off, he threw in 3 catches for 42 yards. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL Top 10's for Monday. Well, we had a interesting Sunday of football. Again, I just don't get it. You can't, if you're betting on these games, some of these games you just, for example, the Bills losing to the Dolphins, or if you're betting on the Jaguars after the first half or even after the third quarter, if you bet on them to win after the third quarter when they're up by 19 with less than a quarter to go and they lose. Just some interesting games, some teams that with bad records winning, just crazy. But that's the NFL. So we're going to go through these games, take a look at them. We'll go see how many we get through in the next half hour or so. And then we'll pick it up tomorrow with the rest of the games. And we'll probably throw in that Monday night game as well. As I had mentioned last week, I'm kind of changing this up. Instead of just going through all these top 10s like career and for either whether a team or NFL, I'm going to go game by game because I realized as I'm going through these top 10s, there's a disconnect about what happened in the game on Sunday. I mean, I'm talking about a top 10 guy. And then, say for the Raiders, and then later on, I might talk about somebody for the Broncos, even though they played against each other. So I felt like that was a little bit of a disconnect. So I'll do the top 10s within the context of each game. And that way, I think it'll just function better that way. So we'll give it a shot and see how it works. If I can get this thing off my screen. There we go. All right. So, like I said, that's what we're going to try. Appreciate everybody who was new subscribers last week. And that's pretty cool. Getting more each week. And each week I'm trying to up this quality of the podcast. All right. So, let's get started. We'll start with the Atlanta Falcons versus the Indianapolis Colts. And that game, wow, I mean, that was another game where the Falcons had a chance to win this game. I mean, halftime they're winning. After 3 quarters, they've tacked on another score. And then they let the Colts come back in the fourth quarter. Actually, it went into overtime with the Colts winning the game. But boy, it looked like this was the very opposite, in a way, of the Jaguars game. And they're in the same division. The Colts looked like they were going to lose this game the entire way until it was over. The Jaguars looked like they were going to win the entire time until it was over. And, the Colts win. The Jaguars don't. But the Colts beat the Falcons 31-25 in overtime. And wow, did Jonathan Taylor have a game. He was the guy because Daniel Jones has been slipping a little bit as far as his quality. I mean, he had another interception. He had a fumble in this game. He actually fumbled the ball 3 times, only lost one of them. So they're going to have to really work on that after these last 2 games, the way he's handled the ball. But Jonathan Taylor, 32 carries for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns. Another game with 3 touchdowns. And then to top it off, he threw in 3 catches for 42 yards. So he had a total of 286 yards of offense in this game. That's amazing. I mean, he touched the ball 35 times. Oh, he was unstoppable for the Colts. And this was late in the game when, oh man, Atlanta just let him get away. He had a run of 83 yards, 83-yard run for a touchdown. tried to run it up the middle, kind of was all jammed up, went around the outside, and off he was gone. No one could catch him. Now, in the process of doing that, for the Indianapolis Colts, I'm looking at just the season for the top 10 rushing touchdowns in a season for the Indianapolis Colts. And this is the first one I've got up here as far as seasons go, because we're only into the 10th game. 10 games for Indianapolis Colts. And yet Jonathan Taylor was 8th going into this game on the season's top 10 all-time for the Indianapolis Colts as far as rushing touchdowns. He went in with 12. Well, he came out with 15. So he has now jumped from a tie for 7th up into 3rd by himself with 15. This is on a season stat. He holds the record with 18. So he's got another 7 games to get 4 touchdowns, will break his own record. So he is on quite a pace. Like I said, he's already in the top 10 at number 3 on the season for the season. It's incredible. Now, when we're looking at rushing touchdowns, so he's just been so good for them. Like I said, he's already had 2 or 3 games. We'll have to look at it, but games where he already had 3 touchdowns in a single game. Now, he really made up for last week, because last week he didn't have many yards at all, maybe 45 or something. It was a low number, no touchdowns, came back with a bang this week. Now, also in this game, you had Drake London had a good game as well on the losing side for the Atlanta Falcons, but he came into the game in trying to break into the top 10 all time for Atlanta Falcons in receiving yards. And he only needed 66 yards. He ended up getting 104 yards in this game. That jumped him up to 3,733, which puts him into 10th. So he is now in the top 10. Dropped a guy from Wallace Francis, who played in the 70s and early 80s for the Falcons. Dropped him out of the top 10, and Drake London now is in the top 10. Next up for him is Tony Gonzalez, but that's another 450 yards or so. So it's going to take him, a few games. Even if he's averaging 100 yards a game, it's going to take him, 4 or 5 games, probably 5 or 6, honestly. But he's got time to do that. He should be able to move up at maybe even as high as number 6. That'd be as far as he gets this year. There's a huge jump from 5th to 6th. Andre Rison in the 90s had 5,633. Jim Mitchell, who was 6th, who played in the 70s, had 4,358. So there's a huge difference between 5th and 6th. But Drake London in the top 10 for the Atlanta Falcons. What a rough loss for them. They really needed the win. Obviously you want to win. The Colts wanted to win too. They've just cemented their lead in their division, and we'll look at that one day this week. But with the Jaguars losing and them winning, that puts them up again by 3 games in the division. All right, let's move on to the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears. This one, again, was another game where it looked like the Giants might win a game here. And lo and behold, Chicago Bears score 14 points in the 4th quarter and pull this one out and win it 24-20. Bears winning 24-20 over the Giants. Dart gave it his all again. He had to leave the game. Russell Wilson came in, was not great. He went 3 for 7 for 45 yards, sacked twice in the little time that he played. But Jackson Dart had 242 yards passing, 66 yards rushing, and 2 touchdowns rushing. He was just trying to carry this team, but they pulled him out, in the second half and had him looked at. We'll see how he's doing sometime this week. It was a game where there were no top 10s in this game to look at, but it was an interesting game. Like I said, Dart did well. Tracy for the Giants ran 14 carries for 71 yards, so he didn't do too bad. And it's just a game that the Giants could not put away. And really, it might be because it was Russell. Russell Wilson just couldn't move the ball, generate any offense when he was on the field, and ended up to the benefit of the Chicago Bears. I mean, these two quarterbacks, Dart and Williams for Chicago, both really played well as far as rushing the ball goes. I mean, Dart had 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. Williams had 63 yards and 1 touchdown. So they carried their team quite a bit. Now, for the Chicago Bears, as far as rushing, it was DeAndre Swift. He had missed a game, and Mononagae came in and had a huge game. Well, Swift went right back into being the main carrier, though he did not get the touchdown. He had 13 carries for 80 yards. Mononagae only had 7 carries for 28 yards, but he did have a touchdown rushing. As far as the receivers go, there was nobody really standing out that great. Romo Odunze had 6 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown. As well as Dart played, he did have a fumble, and that hurt them. But otherwise, it was a very close game. A game you would have thought Chicago should have won easily, and they do end up winning because it was a home game, and they do end up winning 24-20. All right, let's move on. Well, one little stat about this game that I threw in here, and that's because I didn't have it normally, but because Russell Wilson did play, and even though he didn't play that much, he was sacked twice, which pushed him to tie for number 2 all-time in career quarterback sacks. He tied Fran Tarkenton, who played from 1961 to 1978. They both now have been sacked 570 times. 570 times. There's 3 active players on this list. Aaron Rodgers is number 1. Wilson's now tied for 2nd. And Matthew Stafford is now tied for 7th. So there's 3 players currently playing in the history of the NFL, currently playing are on this top 10 for most times being sacked. So now Aaron Rodgers has 500. Well, he might have more than 500. I think he might have more than that. I'll have to check that. But Russell Wilson and Fran Tarkenton tied with 570. All right. Next game up, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. And the Ravens come out with another win. They may be on their way back out of the hole. They have been playing quite well lately, and they are now 4-5. Minnesota's 4-5, and this division is tightening up. And Ravens, who knows? I mean, they get healthy, they could be back on top by the end of the season. So it's going to be fun to watch. But the Baltimore Ravens beat the Minnesota Vikings 27-19. Now, in that game, a lot of players trying to make a move in their top 10s, but none of them did except for Humphrey. He had an interception for the Baltimore Ravens. He had 1 interception, had a 27-yard return. But that interception pushed him up now to a tie for 4th all-time in Baltimore Ravens history for most interceptions in a career. He's now got 20. He's tied with Dwayne Starks and the great Rod Woodson. Interestingly, Starks and Woodson played the same years, back from 1998 to 2001. But they both have 20, and now Marlon Humphrey also has 20 interceptions in his career. Next up for him, a little bit of ways away, is Chris McAllister in 3rd with 26. And no way Humphrey will ever catch Ed Reed, who leads the Ravens with 61 interceptions in his career. He was a great player. But in that game, yeah, like I said, that was the only real stat to look at. And as far as other numbers go in this game, this was a game where it was close at halftime, and then the Ravens started pulling away in the second half. Actually, Minnesota was winning 10-9 at halftime, so it was really close. But the Ravens just mounted the pressure. Lamar Jackson didn't really have a great game, only threw for 176 yards. McCarthy either. McCarthy was even worse. I mean, 20 for 42, so less than 50% passing for 248 yards, but he had 2 interceptions in this game. Now, Lamar Jackson did better about being sacked. That game where he was hurt, he was sacked like 7 times, I believe it was. This game, he was only sacked once. When they have the lead, they have been giving this ball to Derrick Henry, and they did again in this game. Not great numbers, but 20 carries for 75 yards, so not quite 4 yards a carry. But it just showed their willingness to continue to hand him the ball, and that's what happens when they're in the game close or winning. Jackson's going to get the ball. Now for Minnesota, Jones and Mason didn't have much of a game, and that could be because, it's close. I don't know why they're not giving him the ball more. Why is McCarthy throwing it 42 times, except maybe at the end of the game when they're trying to get him come back? But Jones only had 9 carries, and Jordan Mason had 4. That doesn't seem right. McCarthy had 5, so he had more than Mason did. That might be something they're going to look at. No one in the receiving department. I mean, if you have Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison, neither one did well. Jefferson, 4 catches for 37 yards. So not a good game for the receivers in this game. It looked like it was a slow-paced game, and with the Ravens coming out on top. All right, next game up. And if you listen to this podcast at all, you know that living in the Jacksonville area, I root for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this was a really good game until the fourth quarter. I mean, it's crazy. Just crazy. The Jaguars, at the end of the third quarter, were winning 29-10. They let Houston score 26 points in the fourth quarter, and Houston Texans win this game 36-29. That's ridiculous. Just ridiculous. This was a game where the Jaguars could have basically knocked Houston out of contention. It would have put them up by 3 games. Instead, they're up by 1 game over Houston. And now Jacksonville's 3 games behind the Indianapolis Colts. So Houston's still alive. Jacksonville is not as alive as they were going into the game. It was not a good game at all for the Jaguars. Just Trevor Lawrence didn't play that well, had an interception. He could have had another one. He had a rusher coming right at him. He just kind of lobbed the ball, and fortunately it hit the ground. They tried to rush Travis Etienne. He was doing pretty well. What put the Jaguars up in this game was Parker Washington ran a punt back for a touchdown. They also had a fumble. Houston fumbled early on, and that got them a field goal. So Jacksonville had 10 points in the first quarter, like in 5 or 6 minutes. So they jumped out to a 10-0 lead. And you thought, oh, this is going to be good. And it was good until the fourth quarter. And I'm not sure what happened with the defense, if they went into the defense I dread the most, which is the prevent defense. If that's what they did or what, but they could not stop a backup quarterback from beating them. It was sad, just sad. But anyway, in this game, no top 10s for the Jaguars. For the Texans, we had a few things going on there. First of all, Dalton Schultz had been trying to get into the top 10, and he was 12th, but he was only 4 receptions away from moving into the top 10. He ended up with 7 receptions, so he now has 157 receptions to put him number 10 all time in Houston Texans history with receptions. So he's got 157. He knocked out Dominique Williams, who played from 2003 to 2005. He had 154, so he's no longer in the top 10, and Dalton Schultz is. Next up for him is Jabbar Gaffney, who has 171. So he needs 14, so that'll probably be 3-4 games, depending. He doesn't usually get 7 receptions in a game. But Jaguars don't know how to deal with tight ends very well. If you watch the Bowers game, if I put it that way, with the Raiders, when he had 12 catches. by himself in that game. So tight ends seem to do well against the Jaguars and receivers in general. So Schultz now at number 10. Also for the Houston Texans, of course, Nico Collins now, he's already been he's at number 5. He just moved closer to number 4, but he still needs another 68 receptions to catch Kevin Walter for 4th. So that'll be a while for him in that category. Now another one is Derek Stingley for the Houston Texans had another interception. He's had a couple now lately. He was tied for 3rd with Dunta Robinson, who played from 2004 to 2009. They each had 13. Derek Stingley had another interception. He's got 14. He's in 3rd now all by himself. All he has left is Jonathan Joseph, who played from 2011 to 2019. He had 17 interceptions. And Kareem Jackson, who was with the team back 2 years ago, left the team in 2023, but he has 16. Derek Stingley now has 14 interceptions. No, and he doesn't have, like I was mentioning in the previous game, Humphrey, who had an interception, to get on that list for the Ravens. But Humphrey's been playing since 2017 to get to his 20 interceptions. Derek Stingley has only been playing since 2022 with the Houston Texans, so he's already got 14. Houston Texans, their number 1 guy with only 17 is, I think, the lowest number I've seen for any team in the NFL as far as being the number 1 leader in interceptions. So Derek Stingley definitely has a chance to become the leader all time in Houston Texans history as far as interceptions at some point, maybe even this year. He needs 3 more to do that. And then, last but not least, is Anderson. Man, he's been somebody difficult for the Jaguars, but Anderson, I thought it was Anderson. He had 1 tackle for loss in this game. He now has 36. He was tied with Bendardrick McKinney with 35. Will Anderson is busted into this top 10 this year, and he's only been with the team since 2023. He's going to be a superpower for the Houston Texans on the line. Him and Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter had 4 tackles for loss in this game. Now, he's not on the top 10 yet, but I'm sure he maybe next year. But like I said, Anderson has 36 now, so he's in 8th all-time in Houston Texans for tackles for loss. Next up for him is Antonio Smith with 38. So he only needs 2 more to catch him. And he might, who knows, he could move up a couple more spots if he can get into the 40s. Now, for Will Anderson, he's got a target of J.J. Watt, who's the all-time, not the all-time leader, but close to it. He is the first single season tackles for loss in a single season. But J.J. Watt has 172 tackles for loss. So there's a long way for Will Anderson to catch him. But he has been an incredible player, Anderson, so far this year. All right, next up is the New England Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this was a game that I was looking forward to because, you had 2 really good teams. I really wanted to see how good were the New England Patriots. They beat the Buffalo Bills, which you think is a good win, and it really is, despite the fact that the Bills lost to the Miami Dolphins rather handily, to be honest. But they did. So the New England Patriots go into Tampa and win that game 28-23. That was an incredible game. Now, there were no top 10s in this game, but this was a super important game. The New England Patriots were 1 game up on the Bills, and with this win and the loss by the Bills, the Patriots now put a little bit of space between themselves and the Bills. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers, by losing, well, for them, it's not as bad because Atlanta lost as well. So they still are hanging on to their first place spot. But this was a tough game all the way through. At halftime, the Patriots were winning 14-10. In every quarter, both teams scored. So it was a close game. But the Patriots go into Tampa and win that game 28-23. Good game for them. Drake May has been impressive, even though, he was only 16 for 31, so barely over 50%. But he just had a good game. Now, really, who carried this team, the Patriots, was Travion Henderson. He finally got it just all to himself, and he had 14 carries for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 10 yards a carry. Impressive. And you can tell the Tampa Bay Buccaneers really need to get Bucky Irving back. They had Sean Tucker in there. They had Rashad White rushing, and neither one was that great. Ibuka had a big game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But after that, Kate Otten had a good game. But really, they need to get Godwin, Evans back, and they've got another wide receiver, the rookie from last year, which is not McMillan, something like that. But he should be coming back. Once they get healthy, I think Tampa Bay will be fine. This was a tough loss for them, a game that Baker Mayfield couldn't come back from and win. He has a couple of games so far this year. All right, let's do one more game real quick here, and then we'll call it a wraps. So like I said, there were no top 10s in this game. Now, the last one we'll do, not much of a game, really, after that game, but that is the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. And again, here's a game where the Panthers had been playing well, and they'd been beating some teams that made them look somewhat impressive. So you think they have a chance, and this is a home game for the Panthers. New Orleans Saints come in there and win it 17-7. Their defense looked good. Schaff looked good. 19 for 27 for 282 yards and 2 touchdowns. He really looked pretty decent. Bryce Young, on the other hand, didn't. Threw 25 passes, 17 completed, only 124 yards, and had an interception. Even Rico Dowdle did all right. Averaged almost 4 yards a carry, but had a touchdown. But really, honestly, you think they could have ran the ball more, but they were losing. They were only losing at 10-7 at halftime, and they just could not really move the ball. Bryce Young, not only did he have an interception, he had a fumble as well. That really hurt the team. But they had chances to win. They just couldn't. And in the end, they lose kind of a slow, I don't want to say boring game, but kind of. They ended up losing 17-7. Now, in that game, Young had an interception. Bryce Young, he was intercepted, I should put it that way, which is not something, you want to get a stat for, but he is now already tied for 5th all time in Carolina Panthers history for most pass interceptions. He's got 26 total. So he's got 26 along with Chris Weineke, who played from 2001 to 2006. So he'll stay in 5th place probably the rest of this year. Not probably, very likely. He'd be benched if he got to 50. Steve Berline's in 4th with 50 interceptions. So Bryce Young has 26 now to put him into 5th. Tie for 5th, really, with Chris Weineke. That's the only stat, top 10, and not a good one for Bryce Young. Not one you want to be remembered for, but there you go. A game that just wasn't that much of a game, honestly. All right, we're going to call it a wraps right there. And appreciate you listening. Tomorrow we will pick this up. We'll get the rest of the games. We'll get the Monday game, and we'll see how these other teams did. We have some big stats coming up. The Rams, Matthew Stafford, just been going crazy. He's been so good. He's definitely him and Jonathan Taylor, for MVP this year. We'll have to see. It'd be tough for a running back, but the way Jonathan Taylor's been playing, it's a possibility. But Matthew Stafford's really been playing well. All right. Appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube or whatever app you may listen to this podcast on. But you can find this the video or audio of this podcast on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. And on that podcast, if you're watching the video, I'll have charts up showing the scores, the top 10s of every game that I've talked about today. Been trying to make that more of a part of the video so it's a little more entertaining if you're actually watching it. So you can see the top 10s, because like I said, I don't just read the top 10s. I talk about a few of them on the top 10s and the player who moved up the list and whoever might have been around him. All right. So that is a wrap for this episode of NFL Top 10s for Monday. Like I said, I appreciate you listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.